This is the Uptick Network Stock Day Podcast, sponsored by InvestorsHangout.com. Penny stock news and interviews from the microcap world. Public information on OTC, pink sheets, and microcap stocks from around the world. With your host, Everett Jolly.
On today's show, we have a very exciting guest with us. He is Dr. Jon Head. He is the CEO of OncBioMune Pharmaceuticals. Well, they trade on the OTCQB under the ticker symbol OBMP. Jon, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here today.
Hey, give us a little background of yourself and a little bit of background of the company and where you guys are headed to. And then I want to get into some Q&A today.
Okay. Well, OncBioMune Pharmaceuticals originally started 10 years ago, but previous to that, we started research on our therapeutic cancer vaccines back in the 1990s. But 10 years ago, we decided to go to try to bring the products to the public. So we decided to form a company, and last year, OncBioMune Pharmaceuticals went public. We have both therapeutic cancer vaccines and targeted therapies. Mainly, we're pursuing the targeted therapies and the vaccines, but mainly the vaccines. So our main product right now that we're looking at, the main therapeutic we're looking at is a product called Proscovax. And it's a prostate cancer vaccine, which originally in our phase 1 in-house study was used on patients at presentation. However, when we went to the FDA, we found that they wanted us to do it on patients with biochemical failure, which means these are prostate cancer patients who've had definitive therapy, either surgery, radio, or radiation, and now their PSAs are rising. So we're doing a clinical trial in California and at UCSD in the Veterans Hospital, and we've enrolled 16 patients. It's a 20-patient study, and basically they get 6 vaccines. They get 3 weeklies, which means week 1, 2, and 3, and then they get 3 monthlies.
Can you tell us about the status of this trial and what you know from any of the preliminary clinical data that you accumulated so far?
Yeah, the preliminary results, in the 16 patients, we've had 14 have had all 6 vaccines, the 3 weeklies by 3 monthlies. And of those, 3 have progressed so far beyond where they were, and the other are still on the study. So that's pretty good results. And we're out about 30 months, maybe a little more than that, median follow-up. So we have had time for some of these patients to progress. And if you don't progress in 2 years, you're probably not going to progress. So they've leveled off.
Explain to my listeners the difference between a phase 1 clinical trial and a phase 2, and what kind of money are we talking about? Are you going to have a big pharma come in and help you guys out?
Well, a phase 1 is traditionally in the drug business is a tox study, and what they basically do is they increase the dose until the patient has dose-limiting adverse events. They can't take any more drug, and they back it off a little bit. And it's usually done in cancer. It's usually done in any cancer that comes along. So, from that study, they'll decide what dose to use and what cancer to attack. However, this actually is more like a phase 1/2. If you were to publish a paper on this study, it'll be a phase 1/2 publication, because we're only looking at prostate cancer, and we're looking at a fixed dose, okay? So it is basically a phase 2. So the benefit of that is it actually allows you to get efficacy data to figure out if it's working or not. And as I said, only 3 out of the 14 that have actually had all the doses have actually progressed. So that's a pretty good result, actually.
So what's so special about your leading drug candidate, Proscovax? I'm sure there's other prostate cancer drugs on the market. What makes yours so special?
Well, one of the big things with this Proscovax is there's no toxicity. So we're going to be able to step back and look at patients at presentation, which is what our original trial was in-house, was we looked at men who had rising PSAs, had biopsies, did not want to get either radiation or surgery, so they decided to take the vaccine because they were afraid of the morbidity from the therapy. They weren't interested in being incontinent or impotent. So they gave the vaccine. In the original trial, we were able to drive down their PSAs, and we have long-term survival on them. And 4 have been rebiopsied and found to have little or no cancer in their rebiopsies.
I see. My guest today is Jon Head. He is the CEO of OncBioMune Pharmaceuticals. Well, they trade on the OTCQB under the ticker symbol OBMP. What's the next clinical milestones for your leading candidate drug for prostate cancer?
Well, we have 2 things that we're going forward with right now. We have 2 different trials. We have a relationship with a company called Vital in Mexico. We're going to do a phase 2/3 in Mexico. Phase 2/3 in Mexico on Prostate. And it's going to be the same population that we're doing at UCSD in San Diego, which is patients with biochemical failure who have progressive disease after having had standard therapy. So the idea of that is to go into Mexico. It's less expensive to do the trial. Mexico is interested in being the first to market with the product, so we have a lot of positive going forward with in Mexico. The other study is going to be done at Harvard, and it's going to be a phase 2 under our FDA IND, and that's going to be on patients. We're going back to the patients at presentation. So they're 2 different populations. The population for patients with biochemical failure in the United States is about 20,000. The population up front with prostate cancer is about 220,000. So it's a much larger patient population that can be treated with this therapy. And basically, the reason we can go back to these people these men at presentation, patients at presentation, is that there is no toxicity to this. And we've previously shown that it is effective.
You know, a lot of the companies that come on my show usually have some sort of balance inequity problem. It's going to cost you guys a lot to go forward with the phase 1, phase 2 trial. Do you guys have the money in the coffer? Do you plan on raising some money? How do you plan on attacking that obstacle?
Well, one of the reasons we're going to Mexico is it's only $2 million to do the trial in Mexico of 100 patients, as opposed to $10 million to do 120 patients in the United States at Harvard. So that's one way to not have to spend as much money to get started, and we expect good results because we've looked at both these populations, the population at Harvard and the population in San Diego, which are the 2 populations. We've looked at them before, so we know they should work. This should work. So once we get started in Mexico, we believe we'll be able to raise the money for the $10 million for Harvard.
Investors love an M&A activity. Where do things stand with the Vital, and can you tell us anything about other efforts on the M&A front that you guys might have in the back scenes?
Right. Well, the Vital merger, we already have a joint venture with them on the Prostate, but we're looking at a merger with them. We're going through the exercise and due diligence of looking at the merger. And if we merge with them, the best part about that for us is actually a full drug company, pharmaceutical company, because they actually sell drugs in Mexico. That's one of the main reasons I got interested in them to begin with, was the fact that they actually have a distribution, sales force, and marketing force, and they have developed drugs in Mexico. So if we develop Prostate in Mexico, we'll be able to go all the way through with it to market, which we would never be able to do in the United States. In the United States, we have to license the drug.
Right.
Or I don't know. There's lots of possibilities. Whatever you can think about, right? License it, joint venture with some big drug company, or sell the company, whatever.
I've never heard of a Vital company. Can you tell my listeners how big of a company are they? I mean, do you have a market cap, or how much do they do in revenues annually?
Well, they started about a year ago, and they're just starting. They've actually sold their first products this quarter. This is the first quarter, or the last quarter of the year is going to be the first quarter. It's going to be about $800,000 to start, but they will grow very quickly because they have licensed many products that they're going to be selling in Mexico and South America, all over South America and Central America.
My guest today is Dr. Jon Head. He is the CEO of OncBioMune Pharmaceuticals. They trade on the OTCQB under the ticker symbol OBMP. In closing here, Jon, is there anything that we didn't discuss that you would like to get out to my listeners in closing?
Well, I guess the one thing I didn't go on, we're also looking at a lot of orphan drugs That's another market we've been looking at. I've been looking at products, drugs that are in phase 1, phase 2, not preclinical, because preclinical, it's too expensive and too long to get to market for a company like us, and even under the joint venture with Vital. Yeah, we've been looking at orphan drugs. This means drugs under 100,000, patients a year, and that have no other therapy, so it's much easier and less expensive to bring them to market.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. Our guest today has been Dr. Jon Head. They trade on the OTCQB under the ticker symbol OBMP. I wish you nothing but success. We're going to check back with you guys in a couple of months to see how things are going with their company. And again, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.